Hey Amanda, back for more, and look at this infinite screen. It feels like I'm falling down a black hole. Um, let's see. Okay, am I? Yes. Looks like I'm sharing this. So, wanted to teach you about the perfect passive tense. So, last week you learned, or earlier this week, I guess, we learned verbs that look like this with the passive endings. So here we have the principal parts of four verbs. So clamo, clamare, clamawe, clamatum. You may remember clamo, I shout, clamare, to shout, clamawe, I shouted, clamatum, having been shouted, is the fourth principal part. The participle, it's an adjective, having been blanked. So if you look at this top row, we got the active voice, just like we've been doing for a long time. He shouts, he was shouting or she was shouting, she shouted or he shouted, it shouted. Now, clamater would be passive. So instead of it shouts, clamater would be it is shouted. So maybe like the warning is shouted through the city would be a way that could be used in a sentence. Clamabater, it was being shouted, and clamatis est is the new thing, the perfect passive tense. So the perfect passive participle is something we've been doing for a long time. Climatis by itself would be having been shouted, but when you add a form of to be, you get a tense of the verb. You get the perfect passive tense. So instead of having been shouted, you have climatis est would mean it was shouted. That's how you do the perfect tense in the passive voice. So clamawit is it shouted. Clematis S is it was shouted. I'm going to keep getting this warning here because I bent the charger on my computer. I'm going to unplug it just so it doesn't keep popping up. Okay, so, all right. So let me show you what that looks like just down here. So let's use a different word because once I picked clamare, I realized I meant to put woco and whatever. Let's do audio. So audio, I hear, audire, to hear, audiwi, I heard, auditum, having been heard. All right. So if we conjugate this verb in the perfect passive tense, if I can remember how to type, auditus sum, I was heard. Auditus s, you were heard. Auditus, man, auditus est. He, she, it was heard. I'm going to change the participle a little bit here because it's plural now. We were heard. So basically, since we is more than one person, this participle can't be singular. So this would be like a long I, or it could be aditai, which would be, so aditi would be masculine plural. So it'd be like we men were heard. Aditai would be like we women. If we were talking about a group of women, audita would be like we things were heard. I'm just gonna use auditi. Sure, I'll use auditai right here. Why not? Just to mix it up. Y'all women were heard, but you don't need to say the women or men part. It's just that this participle, since this part of the verb is an adjective, actually, it changes depending on what it's agreeing with or what the subject of the sentence is, really. And then audita, whatever, again, it could be there's all kinds of things it could be. Sunt, they were heard. So the way you translate these, you look at this sum es est, sumus estis sunt, which hopefully you'll remember is the form of the verb to be. So literally what this says, auditus sum, very literally, if you wanted to translate, it says like, I am having been heard, which we would never say in English. If you kind of think about it a little bit, I am the person who has been heard or something is kind of what it says. And if you think about that, it just means I was heard. You are having been heard. You are the kind of person who has been heard. You were heard. She was heard, est. Sumus, we were heard. The thing that makes it weird is that, of course, sum means I am. And you're like, well, why is it I was? It's just the formation of this verb. So aditai estis, y'all were heard. Aditai sunt. or adita, whatever, the ending might be. So that's the perfect passive tense. It's different because it's two words that you have to think of as one verb. It's really a participle plus a form to be. So if you look at Wadeo here, you got Wadeo, I see, Wadebom, I was seeing. These are all active. So I was seeing, what happened. I don't know. Weedy, I saw, like weenie, weedy, weeky. Now we get to the passive. So Wedeor, I am seen. Wedebar, I was seen. And then our perfect passive, we sum, or we sus, sum, or whatever, I was seen. One interesting thing about this verb, although I used it in the slides that I made, and I did not use it as seem, S-E-E-M, but if you think about it, I am seen is how I seem. So actually a lot of times in Latin, the passive of Wadeo will actually be translated kind of active, I seem, because how you seem is how you are seen. So like visus sum could be I was seen, like, oh, I was seen entering the school. It's fine. But it could also mean I seemed. Like if you put like, visa sum irata, I seemed angry. And so kind of a peculiar verb in that way. And that I feel like more often than not it actually, but that's just that verb. It's special. So if you think about like facio, right? Like if you look down here, so like, facior, facimer. I'm going to type them kind of in a funny order. Faciris. I may not have this declension exactly right, but facimini. Because I don't think this is faciris. I think this might be, but I'm a little iffy on this, what this vowel is. I don't know. That's just my instinct, but it might be wrong. Facatur, facienter. All right, let's find out together. Facio dictionary. Just for the sake of accuracy, I don't want you to think that I'm just making this up as I go along. That's etymology, conjugation. Please. There we go. All right, we got the active, we got the passive. Passive. Oh, of course. Why did I do this to myself, Amanda? There's this peculiar thing about facio that it actually has its own passive form, and it's the verb fio. So the reason that facaris doesn't seem right is that I was making up a verb, kind of. Is that real? So now that I look foolish in front of you, fio is the verb I become or I am made. Actually, I've maybe not. So actually, this is where one of the more famous Latin jussive subjunctives comes from. Fiat lux, which means let there be light, or let light become, or like let light come into existence, or let light be made. So there's actually this a declension for its own thing. So I guess maybe these words don't exist in Latin. I did a bad job of picking verbs, huh? You can see the idea. I'm probably wasting your time waffling here. I did want to show you, just make sure you kind of get it. So I guess, well, let's just go to the examples. So like, I don't really like stage 30 in the book that we use, to be honest. It's kind of a boring chapter, in my humble opinion. Just about an architect who built that arch in the last chapter, and he wishes that somebody would give him credit for it, and then he ends up taking Salvius up on the crane that he uses to build things to try to impress Salvius with a really great vision of Rome. And it's just, it's not exactly the most compelling thing. So I wrote sentences again about Aeneas And this is Virgil, the guy who wrote the Aeneid. It's way later than the Odyssey. I mean, the Odyssey was probably composed like 1200 BC. Virgil wrote the Aeneid in the like first century BC, late first century BC. So like 1200 years, 1100 years later. Um, it seems to me he was like, let me take the Odyssey and turn it into a Roman thing, and he sends Aeneas on an Odyssey, much like Odysseus. So of course, the Trojan horse, Trojans, the Trojan city is destroyed. Aeneas carries his dad on his back. Craves gets captured. Craves, it's like, go on without me. I'm dead. Find a new place. Get married again. Aeneas takes off with the surviving Trojans. So here's a monoreme. I guess it's a ship with a bunch of oars. Remus in Latin means oar. And I think bireme had 2 rows of oars and a trireme had 3, but I might be wrong about that. Anyway, here's the first sentence. So this is like, if you're familiar with the Odyssey, I know. So Aeneas hits some of the same places Odysseus goes. There are a lot of differences in the story, but there are some overlaps for sure. So here we have our first sentence. I'll do some of it with you, and then I'll leave a bunch for you to try on your own. All right, so I'm just going to start looking at the verb right here. We see tatai sunt. It's one of those perfect passive tense verbs. It's 2 words, but we have to think about them together. So sunt, you got they, and we have to remember they were blanked. What were they? Well, we see tatai is visited. They were visited. All right, so now we kind of have the verb in control. Let's go, okay, well, what was the they? And then we go to our nominative to begin the sentence. Many lands. We see tatai sunt were visited. Ob. That really important prepositional phrase when we have passive, because somebody has to, this has to be done by somebody. So who was done by? By Aenea, Aeneas, et Trojanis superstitibus. Superstites are survivors. So many lands were visited by Aeneas and Trojan survivors. And these are the lands. Bothrotum. I feel like if I was from there, I would just leave. That is not a great name. But the first place he goes is to Thrace. Troy is right here. Thrace is not far away. So in this map, you see Turkey. Troy is right around here. First place he leaves, he's like, well, we've got allies up in Thrace. Why don't we just go there? Thrace, it's a region. It used to be. It now exists in a spread across 3. The ancient. Anyway, yeah. Goes to Thrace. I'm trying to think of it. Should I just tell you the story? So sure, I'll tell you the story and then we'll translate. So he goes to Thrace. He thinks, oh, they'll help us. We have some allies there. When he gets there, as a good pious Roman, he's like, well, I should thank the gods for helping me get here. So he builds an altar. He starts breaking off branches to cover his altar. And when he breaks these branches that are growing out of the ground, or they're like reeds or shoots or something, but anyway, he breaks them and they say ow, which is very strange. And then when he starts snapping them in half, they bleed red blood. And the plant starts talking to him, and it's like, hey, I'm Polydorus. I'm a Trojan. You knew me. I was sent here to the king of Thrace to get more soldiers, like to get help. So they sent me with money. But once the Greeks won, or when he realized the Greeks were going to win, or like the Greeks corrupted him or something, I can't remember exactly, then they killed me. They took the money. And I've always kind of envisioned it like they kind of put him on the ground and they stuck a bunch of spears at him. And the spears that were growing out of his body, or like it looked like branches or something. And so he kind of transformed into this plant, and he's become these things. And he's like, Aeneas, you got to bury me properly, so I can go to the underworld. So let's practice translating some of that before we move on. So primum Aeneas ad regnum proximum venit. So you'll notice there are no long marks in these because I wrote these sentences and I didn't want to come through and put a bunch of long marks in. I guess I could ask ChatGPT to do it or something. That would actually might be smart. All right. What do you think primum is? Primum is first. First, Aeneas, Wainit, Ud, Regnum, Proximum. Proximum has to do with how close it is. It's very close. And like words like proximity come from that. Regnum, it's what a rex is in charge of, a kingdom. Aeneas came to the nearest kingdom. Prius ob his hominibus adjutus, Aeneas auxilium sperabat. Okay, adjutus is the big word here. Wish I could write on the screen. Let me go back to this old buddy. So principal parts of this verb. Aduo. It's not here. Okay, I'm having trouble typing. Aduo, adura, adui, I think, and adutum or adutus, whatever you want to do. This is the verb to help. I always say if you rearrange the first three letters, aid is aid. And so if you do the principal parts with me, it goes like aduo, I help, aduare, to help. Hey, I think it's Julian's. He's had one of those like in my class. Yeah. I think it's Julian Yamachi. Yamuchi. No, I'm not. Yeah. Say hi to I'm making a video for Amanda. For who? Amanda Equilibe. Oh. Yeah. Are you recording right now? Yeah. This is in there. I'm not going to delete it. I'm not sure if we're on screen, but
hi, Amanda. Love you. Bye.
Sure.
Hi, Amanda.
Wow, he made his voice so deep. He was like, "Hi, Amanda." All right, no, we're done. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm scared. So okay, if you rearrange the first three letters, it looks like aid. So it's not here, it's help. So okay, if you do the principal parts, aduo, I help, aduare, to help, adui, I helped, adjutus, having been helped. So on this sentence, it is just adjutus. It's just having been helped. But if you add a form, okay. If you add a form of sum, so adjutus sum would be I was helped. If you do adjutus, let's make it feminine this time. Adjutus, you were, you were helped. Adjutum est, it was helped, and so on. So when you just see the participle, which we've been doing for a while, you still just go having been blanked. So this is having been helped. So having been helped, ob his hominibus, by these people. Prius, before or earlier. Aeneas was hoping for auxilium, help. All right. Let me. I'm not going to do all of this. I'll leave it for you. This is the one we should look at. Magnus clamor auditus est. Okay, what is auditus est then? So auditus by itself would be having been heard. When you add est, it becomes a tense. So who does est? Hishirit. So Hishirit was heard. What was heard? A Magnus clamor. A loud noise or big noise was heard. So that's what this is. A great noise or shout or something was heard. This is when he's picking the plants and they're screaming at him because it hurts. Here we have extracti. Extracti is just a participle, having been blanked, a teres. But if it was like extracti sunt, it would be like, instead of extracti being having been extracted or pulled out, dragged out, it would be, if it was like extracti sunt, it would be like they were dragged out. So like Harundanes extracti a teres says the branches or whatever extracted from the ground, fake runt strepitus, made a noise. This should actually be strepitum, but I make mistakes sometimes. But if it said Harundanes extracti sunt, it would say the branches were pulled out of the ground, and then it wouldn't be a subordinate clause. It would just be a full sentence. Videbatur is that passive form of video, but it's not seen here. It's was seen. Gonna look up words probably while you do this. I'm not just gonna make you watch me talk forever. I think I've kind of hit the high points. Dicta sunt, another one of these perfect passive tense verbs. Dico, to say. Dicta by itself would be like having been said, but dicta sunt, they were said. Mrs. Some, another perfect passive tense. Some, I was blanked. This guy. Dekipimer, this is passive. It's not perfect passive. I should have made it probably perfect passive, but I, wrote silly sentence. Here's another perfect passive. Akisus sum. Sepultus est, another perfect passive verb. You should split it. Infernos terras, it's like to the infernal lands, to the lower grounds. You shouldn't translate this as like Hades, the underworld. Let me tell the story really fast for as you can translate. So they go from Troy to Thrace. The Polydorus is like, dude, get out of here. They betrayed me. Don't stay here. They go to Delos, this island, this Greek island. While they're there, that's where the Delphian oracle of Apollo is. Apollo tells them that they need to go find where they are like originally from. A lot of this is not in the translation, so it's actually good I tell you this because I'm like walking the kids through it as I go. You need to go find where your ancestors were from. His dad Anchises is like, oh, I think that's Crete. I think we're from this big island in the Mediterranean, just not far from here, called Crete. And so they go to Crete, led by Aeneas. But when they're in Crete, like in the first year, people just start dying like a plague. And nobody knows why. And this is the god's way of telling them they're in the wrong place. Aeneas's Penates appear to him. If you look at this picture, they look like statues. These are the household gods, the Lares, if you remember. In Latin 1, we learned about these like little altars they have in their houses. Some of the rich people have in their houses where they have these little statues of gods or ancestors that they think protect them. But if you actually look in the paintings about the Aeneid, Anchises is carrying the Penates, the Lares, these little statues of their gods. They don't leave their gods behind. And you can see them here as well in this painting. And so the Penates come to Aeneas in his sleep, and they're like, "Hey, you're in the wrong place." They're like, "You're not from Crete. Your family is not from Crete. Your family's from Italy, and you need to go back there." And this is how Virgil connects the myth of Aeneas to the Romans, because Aeneas is a Trojan, but he leaves Troy, and then as the story goes, he comes to Italy, and then he like sets up the town that will, give birth to Romulus and Remus, who will set up Rome. And so the Romans actually say, actually we're the Trojans. We are the Trojans reborn, or whatever. So the Trojans run into problems on the sea, and they end up on this island where there are these harpies, these creatures that are like flying women. Man's worst nightmare, a woman with wings. Jokes. And the harpies are originally from this story where this guy called Phineas, he had this feast. He did something to make the gods mad, and to punish them, Jove, does not say love, it says Yoe, the god, by the god Jove. He punished Phineas by giving him this feast every day, but then every day the harpies would come down and just snatch his food. And the Aeneas and his men run into these harpies. They try to kill him, but they're like indestructible. They put a little curse on Aeneas, but it's not really a curse. Then they experience Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla, the six-headed monster that if you go past it, it eats men off of your boat. The alternative is Charybdis, the whirlpool that sucks down the ocean and destroys your entire ship. So, people usually go, Odysseus chooses to go past Scylla. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken, Aeneas just doesn't go that way, but we kind of get a mention of it. And that usually is right here, I believe, kind of between Sicily and Italy. And eventually they land on the island of the Cyclops. And in the Aeneid, the way that Aeneas sees the Cyclops, this Greek guy comes running out. He's like, "Hey, I was left behind, Odysseus," and he just tells him straight up the story of the Cyclops, which I'm not going to tell you right now because I don't want to make this video longer. But I think Virgil is just like, "Man, the story of the Cyclops is great. I'm just going to straight up steal it and put it in my book." So